sir, while staying on topic of the economy, if you could take a step back and look at the bigger picture, the global economic situation is turning more dire every day with rising inflation, fears of recession, job cuts everywhere, and mostly the pandemic loss is yet to be fully felt. But still, India is projected to grow at more than 8% every year for the next decade. So why is this dichotomy there? Why do we seem to be cut off from what seems to be happening outside?
Teja, I think it's because of two factors. What I say may be partly controversial. One factor is simply because we underperformed earlier. Relative to India's growth potential, our demographic profile, our natural resources and abilities, because of governmental failure over the decades, we underperformed. It's not about one government or one day. So when there's underperformance, when you create a slightly better set of conditions, then performance can overshoot the average. So it's the past failure that gave us a better platform in a way, and also low base effect. But the second is, genuinely we can take some satisfaction and pride that in the past decade or so, 7, 8 years in particular, some conscious efforts were made to manage our economy better. The banks which were in crisis 10 years ago, and that continued even until 5, 6 years ago, because banks cannot come out of a crisis overnight. If I indulge in bad lending today, impact is not felt today. It's felt 3 years down the line. So 2017, 18 also banks were in a difficult situation. But significantly, the bank's performance has increased. If you take the top 5 banks, the cumulative loss of these 5 banks was 18,000 crores after dumping lakhs of crores of public money into those banks. I'm talking of government money from the taxpayers, apart from the deposits and other things. They lost cumulatively that year alone for the 5 banks, 18,000 crores. What is the current situation? Cumulative profit of these 5 banks is 53,000 crores. On this head alone, we have a 70,000 crore plus every year. Just to give one example. It matters. It matters a lot. Similarly, infrastructure. Significant efforts are made to improve infrastructure. We need to do a lot more. India is at the rank bottom in infrastructure among large countries. But compared to what it was, a conscious and effective series of steps were taken to improve the quality of infrastructure. It's ongoing. Whether a road, or railways, or ports, and so on and so forth. Third, because of past policies, Vajpayee government in particular continued subsequently, the mobile telephony, etc., we are now among the leaders in the world. While we leapfrogged, and that's led to digitalization of the economy. That led to UPI, for instance. India is number 1 in the world today. Even the poorest people, they're able to transfer money. Therefore, economic efficiency with ease of transfers in a transparent and effective manner, that has helped the whole digital economy. And there are conscious efforts made to promote manufacturing and to encourage industry. And because China, for a variety of reasons, some of them because of global factors, some of them because of self-induced factors, people are losing faith in China. China is, after all, a monumental economy, which is the fulcrum of global manufacturing. But as far as practicable, people want to go beyond China. You cannot trust China's supply chains alone. And India is obviously an important candidate if you use it. So some of it being leveraged. So all these together give us an opportunity. And this with the sound welfare system, your Jan Dhan program, etc. Therefore, welfare can actually reach. The other day, I was watching at the height of this Ukraine war. Germany was, like all other European countries, was transferring money to the families to meet the energy costs, part of the energy costs. The German finance minister said we have the capacity to reach only about 1 million families a day. Germany is the world's mighty technology country. India can reach 800 million people a day. With our level of poverty, imagine the technological sophistication in the welfare delivery. And that matters. That gives confidence. And after all, when growth is taking place, the poor also, their concerns must be addressed immediately. Otherwise, not only are the poor suffering and it's immoral, it will also lead to political strife and disorder. Now we are able to contain those forces also. So I think a combination of these have given us a reasonably good opportunity. But we must concede it's not our birthright. We must not become arrogant. To sustain a 7-8% growth rate over the next 15-20 years is possible, but unless we do many other things, like the state's finances we discussed today, like rule of law, at least some elements of it institutionalized so that there is predictability and speedy and efficient justice in terms of property rights, contracts, etc. And education is improved significantly so that skills are real, not some bogus education on paper, but real education and skills are available. Healthcare is improved at least to a point at a low cost so that productivity is higher and poverty, grinding poverty is reduced. So unless some of these steps parallelly continued, this growth rate cannot be sustained. But there is a great opportunity. Let's rejoice and let's make the most of it.
Sir, as you have mentioned before, India is at a crucial stage where a majority of our population is still the youth of the country. So, what steps do we need to take, or how does this situation affect the youth in particular?
I think actually the current generation of young people world over, in particular in India, are remarkably lucky people. Because I think I'm a great optimist and I see enormous room for optimism world over. Technology is dramatically changing for the better. We are going to live realistically now, it's no longer a dream, in a world free from fossil fuels. Renewable energy will become the norm. Abundant, cheap energy, renewable will be the norm. New materials are coming in a big way. New technologies are coming in a big way. Quality of life is going to improve. Leisure and other activities are going to improve because fewer and fewer people can produce more and more increasingly in the world. So I think we are going to live in a super abundant world. Of course, there are going to be transitional problems. There's no question about it. India too is in that cusp. And we have a greater advantage compared to other countries because of demography, as you said. For the next 40, 50 years, we will have abundant young people in the working age. Whereas China already is decreasing the working age people. Every year they're losing probably 5 to 10 million working age people. Right away 5 million people they're losing. And increasingly it's going to be harder for them to sustain an economic engine without adequate number of working people, without migration. And East Asian countries are not generally in favor of migration. And perhaps even if migration is allowed, I don't know how many people would dare to go to China. In an undemocratic regime where the future is uncertain, in a hostile culture, probably that may not work also. Whereas in India, that's not a problem. So demography is our great advantage. It also means that the demand will continue to grow as young people get married, they raise families, or demand for goods and services grows. That itself is an engine for economic growth, provided the productivity of youth is maintained. Now, productivity will be maintained only with skills and quality healthcare. Unfortunately, our education is absolutely the pits. We are one of the worst in the world. But luckily, because the demand side is very strong, education can be improved. We have a sound policy now. The national education policy is a fairly sound policy. But there is a long gulf, a big gulf between government's policy, good policy, and its execution. Because we have so many states, school education is largely a state issue. And all the players involved, the teachers, the students, the parents, the society, the community, the state governments, they all must come together, and the non-profit organizations, etc., etc. And the scale is humongous. We're looking at 260 million young people in schools. They themselves will constitute the third or fourth largest country in the world. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I think the platform is there. And that's why some of us are paying a lot of attention to quality education, to quickly accelerate the process of skilling our people in the fastest possible manner to the largest number of people. I believe technology gives us an opportunity. But if policies at the state level, they don't move apace with the opportunities available, then some of our growth momentum will be lost.
Sir, as the ever optimist you are, along with education, what are the other key areas do you think we need to focus on so that we can achieve the goals that we have set for ourselves in the future?
Apart from education and healthcare also is necessary, particularly at the grassroots level, in order to enhance productivity and reduce poverty. Because poor healthcare or inadequate access to healthcare and poverty, they are leading to 50 to 60 million people descending into poverty every year. That itself is a large nation. 60 million in US, in Europe would be one of the largest nations. There are only 2-3 nations in Europe which are as big as that number. Every year that many people are becoming poor in India because of lack of health care. And it's a low-hanging fruit because at a low cost we can do it. India is one of the few countries where at a very low cost you can actually bring about such a big change. But apart from these two, education and healthcare, you require to look at rule of law. On paper we have rule of law. In reality it stinks. There is no fear of law. There is chaos all around. Might has become right. Your property rights are not respected, and your contracts are not honored, and they are dishonored with impunity. Now, with economic growth, there must be predictability in human behavior. If I want to invest money, if I want to take quick decisions, I must trust you. I can trust you. Probably, if you're my family member, hopefully I can trust. Sometimes even there, the trust fails. But when you're an unknown person to me, I'm unknown to you, how can there be trust? How can you say, just trust me and do things? That's why rule of law is important. If there's an agreement, that will be honored. If it's not honored, very swiftly it will be resolved. And whoever has deviated will be penalized. And the person who has suffered some loss, it will be compensated. That confidence must be there. Or my property rights will be respected. So unless that rule of law, at least the minimum elements of rule of law that are necessary for economic growth, they are quickly put in place, we will have a logjam. The next element is labor laws and regulatory framework. Even today, our psyche among our political parties is to treat every investor as a potential sinner. An investor, entrepreneur is a sinner. In our scheme of things, he is a bad fellow, evil fellow, like old B-grade Hindi films. Every entrepreneur, manager is a bad fellow. Every worker is an angelic fellow. Not true. Both are good people. Both are eking out a decent livelihood. Both are providing goods and services to society. Both are creating wealth. Both have to work in harmony. So this old-fashioned socialist binary vision must give way to a coordinated way. It's already happening, but the law has not kept pace with that. Similarly, other regulatory framework, even today, a lot of regulatory burden and a lot of penalizing people, harassing, extortion of money, corruption, even today they're happening. We all know that. That must be curbed. And finally, urbanization. Earlier we discussed in different context. If this kind of a massive urbanization of unskilled people to distant big cities continues, the cities which are engines of growth will be choked. There will be a disaster, along with massive human suffering. Therefore, there must be conscious effort to promote good infrastructure and education, healthcare in small towns which are natural hubs for urbanization. And therefore, encourage, not by any diktats, but by natural economic forces, for people with low level of skills to migrate to small towns, have the benefit of the local culture and community and advantages of urbanization both, and fusing agriculture with non-agricultural activities, rural with urban economy. Big cities will continue to grow, but without big skills, why should a person with low level skills always go only to a big city? There's nothing more there available to him in a small place. Whereas if you're a film director, if you're a university researcher, probably you have to only go to a big city. So irrespective of skills, if everybody is forced to go to a big city, we may be fond of the so-called mega cities, but world over, they're trying to shrink the cities. 10 million cities are becoming now 7 million cities. Tokyo was at one time 10, 11 million. Now it is 7 million. New York at one time was bigger. Today it's only 7 million. Because they are creating other magnets of growth. So urbanization, we must reimagine urbanization, have in situ urbanization as much as possible. Once these steps are taken, these are very practical steps, affordable steps at a low cost, and achievable steps. If this much we do, I think our growth will be unstoppable for the next 20-25 years.